Good morning. Welcome to Lake Science Cafe 101. I'm James Ty, the Executive Director, and thank you very much for joining us this morning. I've got my coffee, I hope you have yours. We have a great presentation today. First, starting off, I'll tell you about a few things that the Clean Lakes Alliance is doing this summer, including to begin with our State of Lakes report. The Clean Lakes Alliance on an annual basis looks at how we're doing towards our goal of reducing phosphorus of up to 50%. That will bring us down to 46,000 pounds annually being put into our lakes, which will double our days of clarity and reduce a lot of the algae. As you can see, we are 42% way to our goal, which is great. Year over year, we're making great progress, but there's a lot more to do to get to our goal. The red area is the amount that work is being done in the rural, and the blue is the urban area. This is a little bit different than an annual campaign because you have to do all this work every year. So you basically go back to zero and to do everything again over, plus a little bit more. So hats off to the county, the city, the DNR, and the other municipalities, including the Clean Lakes Alliance, for funding projects to reduce phosphorus. Well, we know that climate change is here and we're getting more and more rain. So the Clean Lakes Alliance together moved to the next step. The next step is the Yahara Clean Compact. The Yahara Clean Compact consists of 19 organizations across the watershed that have come together realizing that climate change came here faster than we wanted, including the floods in 2018 and 19. So the Clean Lakes Alliance led the effort to bring all these groups together, including our county executive, who will be speaking later today, our new mayor, plus other organizations such as Farmers of Wisconsin and the Realtors Association. We work on this on a monthly basis and working to change the course so we can get more projects done at a faster pace so we can have clearer lakes for all. Well, to find out how our lakes are doing, we have a thing called LAKEFORECAST.org. Our citizen monitors, you can see Mr. Koziel here, also monitor the lakes on a weekly basis. They load up their information up to Yahara Lakes 101. The map on the left, you can see lots of blue going on, which means that's good water along that shoreline, or green, meaning on that day, they had more algae. We're really thankful for all these monitors. There are over 70 of them, and we also partner with City County Health to move things forward. Next slide. So finally, everybody's at home, and in June, a lot of people delivered the Lake Guide. It was a wonderful guide, including the State of Lakes report that we talked about earlier. Well, if everybody at home, there's more things you can do at home to help the lakes. We have our top 10 list, which include rain barrels, getting those leaves out of the street, and producing rain gardens. Clean Lakes Alliance hopes that you can get involved by making a change at your home. There's a great way to teach your kids or your grandkids or even yourself of something that you can do at home to help the lakes. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Eric Johnson, Chairman and CEO of HiSite Corporation, this month's monthly sponsor.
Thank you, James. Again, I'm Eric Johnson, Chairman and CEO of HiSite Enterprises. In case you don't know what we do, HiSite distributes products like cookware, air purification and water filtration, juice extractors, blenders, cutlery, and other related household products through independent sales agents throughout the Americas. Additionally, HiSite is a founding supporter of Clean Lakes Alliance and happy to be this month's sponsor of Yahara Lakes 101. Our involvement with the organization includes sponsoring various programs, including all 9 frozen assets, as well as providing annual operational support. We believe strongly that the quality of our lakes is of great importance for the communities we live in. Through our wellness program, HiSite employees are planning on participating in seed collection with the Friends of Pheasant Branch Conservancy. I want to thank our sponsors, presenting sponsors, Johnson Financial Group and First Weber Foundation, supporting sponsor, National Guardian Life Insurance Company, usually the hosting sponsor, the Edgewater, the University of Wisconsin Nelson Institute for Environmental Studies, and finally, our media partner, the Isthmus. Just a few quick announcements. First, I want to thank everybody who has renewed their friend or lake partner donations this year. Here's a list of lake partners who have joined or renewed this past month. HiSite is a proud lake partner, and my wife Amy and I are friends of Clean Lakes through the 63 Club, which is a reoccurring donation starting at just $8.63 a month. If you haven't renewed, we'd love for you to join now. HiSite has recently moved our headquarters to Middleton. Therefore, we are extremely interested in today's talk titled Pheasant Branch Conservancy, Protect, Restore, Preserve. Here to tell us a little more about the topic and to introduce our speaker is Vice President of Private Banking at Johnson Financial Group, Chuck Salzwedel.
Thank you, Eric. As Eric said, Johnson Financial Group is proud to be a presenting sponsor of these talks. We look forward to the day when we can safely gather at the Edgewater again, enjoy some coffee and some pastry, and listen to these talks in person. Located on the western shore of Lake Mendota, Pheasant Branch Conservancy is a natural area managed by the City of Middleton and Dane County Parks. If you recall, last year Dane County purchased a 160-acre farm to the north of the Conservancy to add to its over 600 acres of protected land. Today we're going to hear from 3 different speakers to check on the progress of this land, as well as the entire Conservancy. We'll first hear from Lloyd Eagan, the current co-president of the Friends of Pheasant Branch Conservancy and former Clean Lakes Alliance board chair. Lloyd spent nearly 35 years working for the Wisconsin DNR, spending the final 2 years of her career serving as a water leader for the southern half of Wisconsin. After Lloyd, Dane County Executive Joe Parisi will give us an update on what is being done on the newly purchased 160-acre tract of land, which is the largest conservation preservation investment in Dane County history and will prevent an estimated 2.6 million gallons of runoff each year through increased filtration into the natural landscape. Wrapping up this morning's talk will be Mark Wegner, Assistant Director of Conservancy Lands and Forestry for the City of Middleton. Mark will update us on how the repair and restoration of the creek corridor is progressing following the 2018 floods. Throughout this morning's talk, if you have questions, please type them in the question box. We'll read through them and we'll get to as many of them as we can at the conclusion of the presentation. Now, please welcome Lloyd Eagan, the Friends of Pheasant Branch Conservancy.
Thank you, Chuck. I am delighted to be here this morning. I am co-president of the Friends of Pheasant Branch Conservancy. Pam Shannon is the other co-president. I will briefly introduce you to our organization and our activities and what response we had to the 2018 floods that impacted the Conservancy. This presentation will lay the groundwork for our 2 other speakers, Dane County Executive Joe Parisi and Mark Wegner with the City of Middleton. They will provide you with details of restoration activities in the Conservancy. 2020 is the 25th anniversary of the Friends of Pheasant Branch Conservancy. We had a number of events scheduled to celebrate that year, but due to COVID, they have been postponed till next year. Our mission, which is on the next slide, is to restore, protect, and promote Pheasant Branch Conservancy and its 25-acre watershed for today and tomorrow. We are a nonprofit organization that seeks to restore and protect and promote the Conservancy, and we have a 15-member active volunteer board. We are supported by our membership, which ranges between 500 and 600 people. We'd encourage any of you who are not members to join us. And we operate by a committees of volunteers that do a wide number of activities. And I'll talk about those next. So in restoration and management, we host monthly volunteer days. This year, not so much because of COVID, but we also use contracted services and we consult with experts on restoring and managing the 640 acres within the Conservancy. We also have an education group that provides education programs. We work with schools and teachers to provide teaching field trips for area school children, and we host Conservancy Day education programs on different topics. We sponsor Tunes on Tuesdays in the summer in the Conservancy, and we work with senior communities on programming with various dementia-friendly activities, like Make a Memory Days. In short, we provide environmental education opportunities for all ages. We also have a group that works on supporting accessibility and use. We work in partnership with others to improve access to the Conservancy, and we work with a highly diverse set of users with different abilities. So for instance, we've partnered with Audubon on birding by ear programs so that blind people can actually get involved in birding. I've mentioned the Make a Memory Day events, and we've also worked with the City of Middleton, who hosts a all-terrain wheelchair right on the Conservancy property. Next slide, please. We have an active water quality group. So we measure water quality and work on protecting the watershed. We have 3 active water quality monitoring efforts going on right now in the watershed. And we work to limit the phosphorus that enters the creek and the lake through a variety of efforts. We are delighted to be partnering with Dane County on the sampling before and after of the acre property restoration to see exactly how it affects runoff. And we're already seeing benefits so far. I'd like to focus a little bit on 2019 highlights. It was a big year for us. First, we raised enough money to pay for a truck, which you see in the lower right-hand corner. This truck is vital to helping us take tools and people to restoration work sites in the Conservancy. Second, we had a very successful fundraising effort. We worked with the City of Middleton to help them stabilize stream banks and restore the trails that were severely damaged. You'll hear more about that. And we worked hand in glove with the city to help select a consultant to develop a master plan for the creek corridor and to select consultants to prepare the engineering plans and implement that, that restoration work. You'll hear more details about that from Mark Wegner. And finally, we were absolutely delighted when we learned that Dane County purchased the 160-acre farmland from the Acre family. And we are working very closely with Dane County staff as they develop the restoration plans for that property. And we anticipate that we will be there from beginning to end as it is restored and then needs to be maintained. So that's most of my talk. I want to, but before I introduce or welcome our next speaker, I want to announce a special new fundraising effort called Seed the Need. And I'm very pleased to announce this effort. It's a true partnership with the help of Clean Lakes Alliance and in cooperation with Dane County. We are trying to raise money, as you might guess from the title, to help raise seed for reestablishing prairies on the acre property. As we're trying to raise $100,000 over 4 years to match funding that was provided by the Alliant Energy Foundation. And our goal is that we will be able to help the county pay to put a platinum prairie on the acre property, which will be a wonderful prairie to visit, and it will also provide a wide variety of benefits, and it will provide a seeding source for the rest of the prairies throughout the county. So it will be a big benefit to all. And I think the next speaker really needs no introduction, but Joe Parisi, our own Dane County executive, is here to tell you more about this fabulous project. Thank you.
Hi there. Well, thank you, Lloyd. I appreciate it. I appreciate everything that all of our partners are doing and coming together to help us with this property. Friends of Pheasant Branch and Clean Lakes Alliance and others. This is really important, not only for the resources that make this place and will make it even more special, but I think it's really important that we all have ownership in regions and parcels like this. It's much more experiential than simply, excuse me, purchasing a property somewhere and never setting foot on it. This property is truly part of the community and has not only local, but regional impacts. And for me, it's really a pleasure to be involved with this project because I grew up just down the street from here on Century Avenue. And when I was a kid, what's now Pheasant Branch Nature Preserve, we just called across the street. And, you know, a lot of great memories of being over in that area and being all along Pheasant Branch Creek. You know, that's why it was really challenging and difficult a couple of years ago to see the devastation from the flooding along Pheasant Branch Creek. We were happy in the county to be able to contribute close to $1 million toward that restoration effort, and we'll continue our partnership with the city and others in that area. What's really exciting about this purchase that we made last year, this, pardon me, this 160 acres, is, as you know, we're the fastest developing community in the state. And one of the challenges we have, be it from preserving lands for habitat or protecting water quality or piecing together bicycle trails, is the competition for land is fierce. And so we've really focused our efforts in the Conservation Fund and in our conservation purchases in Dane County on looking at properties that have the greatest impact to water quality. And when this property became available, there was really nothing else that was even close to the impact we could have from saving this from development. And this parcel was slated for development. And had we not been able to come in and purchase it, rather than a restoration right now, we would see streets being put in and houses developed. Now that happens and it's got to happen somewhere. I'm not demonizing that. You know, we need housing stock, but it's very important that we work together to protect these most vulnerable parcels. And I think a lot of you know why this one is so important. As we've seen from some of the maps, there's a stream that feeds directly into Pheasant Branch Creek and directly into Lake Mendota. And as you can see from the map here in the red, that's the parcel that we purchased. And it's directly adjacent to Pheasant Branch. So we get to have more contiguous space, not only for habitat, but for flood reduction and helping to clean our lakes. And one of the advantages that's, you know, we're recognizing is even more important now with prairie restoration is a prairie's ability to sequester carbon. And that rivals the ability of forested land to do that. So there are incredibly good reasons and important reasons why this purchase has occurred. You know, we talk a lot about water quality, but in the last couple of years, we've been unfortunately reminded of the impact of flooding. And the impact of flooding is also something that impacts water quality. What we're finding, I took a walk on the property just yesterday with Laura and Matt and Teresa from our staff. And what we're finding is that there are only a couple to a few events that are responsible for most of the phosphorus that enters the system every year. Yesterday, when I was looking at the map from last year, you could see, you know, a couple of spikes. It was last year or this year, I believe. One in March during the snowmelt, and then another during a heavy rain. So we really have to prepare for those heavy rain events. So what this project will do is it will take this land and restore it basically to what it was, and it will have enhanced efforts at flood control and holding water and slowing the flow of water into the system. So we've already taken down the structures that were there, the barn, the house, etc. And the next step will be to remove and crush the concrete from there, and that'll be recycled and used for a future parking lot. And then as we look at the restoration, if you go and take a walk down there today, which I'd recommend anytime, it's a really nice, little over a mile trail that you can go in and walk alongside first and through the area that was purchased years ago by former County Executive Phelps. And that was an incredibly important purchase then when people weren't thinking a lot about this. And so what we're doing is adding on and building upon that purchase. That purchase protected a very important spring, Frederick Spring, that you can go and look at and literally see it bubbling up through the sand, the water, and that crystal clear water that then feeds into Pheasant Branch. And that's one of the most important springs down there that we want to help protect. And we want to keep that water clean as it moves into the lake. And then further up from there, you can see as you walk through, you can see where the restorations are about to begin. And there are fields planted in soybeans, which is the crop I'm told you like to plant the year before you're going to do a prairie restoration, because it takes care of some of the weed seed that you don't want popping up, and it prepares the soil nicely compared to corn, which would have corn stalks sticking out, etc. So the lands that are in soybean now, it's about a quarter of the acreage, that those soybeans will be harvested, and then the restoration will begin. And then we will move every year to do another quarter of the property, about another 40 acres. What's in corn this year will be in soybeans next year, and then will be restored. So it looks like about a 4-year project, and when we're done, we'll have a beautiful prairie. There will be wetland restoration, there will be hiking trails, and we're looking at a future link to a bicycle trail there as well. And I think it was, I'm not sure if it was Chuck or someone mentioned the flooding reduction and keeping the water on the ground and how much that will be. And we're looking at, throughout the year, if we have a couple of heavy rain events, as was mentioned, maybe 2.5 million gallons of water that will stay on the ground rather than just rushing into the lakes during the flooding event. And if you compare that with not only what's there today, but had this property been developed into residential area, there would have been less infiltration. And so compared to had it been developed, we'll have a net gain of 5 million gallons that stays on the land. So we're really excited about this property. It's really a once in a lifetime purchase. As you know, it was not an inexpensive purchase, but we felt that there was really nothing else like this, that we could get so much benefit. And I don't think anyone 5, 10, or 50 years from now will look back and be disappointed that it was not developed into a residential area. This area also has cultural benefits. Native Americans were the first occupants of this area. And so that's something that we're continuing to delve deeper into, being able to recognize and educate people about the history of the people who were here before any of us, aside from anyone who's Native American on this call. So again, when we look at the overall benefit of a parcel like this, and we look at the community involvement, we're fortunate also that this abuts the Henson farm. And Will Henson is one of our founding Yahara Pride farmers, a very responsible and progressive farmer. And so to have a farm like that to work with that's upstream of a property like this is a wonderful partnership. I think I'll stop there because I know we have a lot of speakers today. But again, I want to thank everyone who's involved in this for your support of this project. And I'll stick around in case there are any questions later on. Oh, and I am introducing, I'm introducing Mark from the City of Middleton, who's been a great partner in this as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe. All right. All right, good morning, and I'd like to thank the Clean Lakes Alliance for allowing me to speak to all of you this morning what's going on in the city of Middleton. In our conservancy parcels, namely the Pheasant Branch Creek Corridor and the Pheasant Branch Conservancy. And I want to start out by just giving a little bit of a geography lesson regarding this. When people talk about the conservancy, really in the city, there's more than just the quote conservancy. There's 4 main areas that we deal with. They're all interlinked. There's the South Fork, the North Fork, the Pheasant Branch Creek Corridor, and then the Pheasant Branch Conservancy. And within the Conservancy, as mentioned earlier, that's both managed by the City of Middleton and Dane County Parks. So here on the map, this is the North Fork, and that is the area where Spectrum Brands is over here, Airport Road, the Middleton Maury Airport. So this area here is the South Fork, and what really comes in here is coming from the town of Middleton and town of Springfield, and that filters down into the Creek Corridor. This area down here is what we refer to as the South Fork. This is down here, Pleasant View Golf Course, and then that goes into PPD and Greenway Station, Highway 14 in this area through here. Then that also then links into the Creek Corridor. This is the Creek Corridor itself. It basically starts from Deming Way, filters all the way through the city, across the Beltline, Park Street, and then Century Avenue. And then we get into the Pheasant Branch Conservancy, which everybody is quite familiar with. The area in the white box is the county portion currently, and then the area with the star is the newly purchased property. And I bring this up in particular because I know in the city we get lots of questions, phone calls, what have you, regarding things that often happen within the county portion. And we obviously gladly filter that over to the county, and I'm sure that the county gets their fair share of questions that go as well into the city portion. So we have no issue with that, but it's just one of those things where I don't think people often realize where they're at. So one of the things that's been going on in the past year, especially since 2018 flood, is trying to plan. And a little bit of insight into the planning process. We started this, in 19, and this has taken quite some time. And in large part because my first experience with FEMA in detail has been this project, and it's been excruciatingly slow. Those of you who have experience with FEMA will understand where I'm coming from. Just to get an answer regarding the planning of this rebuild, the master plan itself, it took the better part of 6 months before we could even get an answer from FEMA as to whether or not that would be eligible for reimbursement funding. So that took quite a while in and of itself. So once we got that answer, which was a no, then we said, okay, we need to start moving on this. And then that's when the Friends of Pheasant Branch also stepped in and said, hey, we can help you out with this, which is greatly appreciated. This planning event took, like I said, the better part of, well, almost a year. In large part because of the varying user groups. We had to get lots of input from all of them and some back and forth between the groups, mainly, bikers, pedestrians, walkers, bird watchers, all of those groups trying to come together because we have such diverse usage of this area. We also were constrained just with the geography of the area itself. It's not a wide area to begin with. So what can we do in there to try to build in some resiliency for the infrastructure that we have in there, and then also trying to maintain the environmental aspects of this area because it's been altered so very much. So again, we tried to look at different techniques to try to incorporate those user groups, to try to separate them to a degree so that, bikers, when they're coming through, aren't negatively impacting walkers and vice versa. And we also had lots of public input on this. The master plan itself was a consortium of 3 different firms to write this: Cardinal, KL Engineering, and Jensen Ecology. Picture of from the kickoff, again, started last June, so it's been over a year now. It was well attended by the general public, and this was inside Cromery Elementary School. As you can see, they've got a really nice cafeteria area that overlooks the conservancy. And then we had a second follow-up one where we then looked at the different design alternatives. And we had 3 alternatives for each one of these aspects. We had 3 different alternatives for how to stabilize the banks. We had 3 alternatives for how to do stream alignment, because there are areas where we feel it might need to be moved somewhat to get it away from the altered banks. We looked at 3 different alternatives for trails, 3 alternatives for bridges, and then we looked at the vegetation aspects of it. And then also on top of this, we looked at a online survey that we put out through a company based in Middleton called Polco to get feedback. And just a quick overview of that, we had good participation in that too. 370 participants. One good thing about Polco is that we can really drill down as well as to see who from in Middleton took their survey and those out of it, and then demographics on age and whatnot. And as you can see, big shout out to that last group, the one responded in that age group. So takeaway there is everybody can learn this stuff technology wise. So we're going to continue this. Obviously, we have to continue the online version of things right now, unfortunately. So coming out of this master plan, or guiding plan, I guess I could really call it, the preferred trail option that we had in here was this one here. And what the takeaway from this is, in areas where we have enough width, we're going to try to incorporate a little bit of a secondary offshoot of a trail, which would be pedestrian only, to allow that separation of the groups, to give a little bit more of a quiet, reflective area, so that you can just walk and not have to worry about bikes or runners or anything like that, and get a little bit closer to the nature off to the sides. It's not going to be available everywhere just because of how narrow it is in some areas, but where we can, we're going to try to do this. And then also some of these areas here that are more of the wider blue, those are areas where we're going to also explore possibilities of moving the stream channel itself to get rid of some of these larger bends, potentially, to allow for some space between these banks, because in a lot of these areas, this is where we have a lot of the significant erosion from those upper areas. Just an example of what this potentially might look like. So that would be the existing path in those areas where it's wider, and we have a narrower path then for walkers. The vegetation, again, we have 6 different vegetation communities that we're looking at for this area. Honestly though, what you see here on the map isn't going to be what's going to be finally there, in large part because we need to see what's going to be there after the construction, after the restoration of the stabilization methods that are incorporated into these areas. Once we know that, then we'll be able to go through and say, all right, this is the area where we're going to have this wetland. This is where we're going to have oak savanna. So that will be coming then after the major construction portions are done, which leads me into the biggest new aspect. Just here in the last week, we finally had the engineering and design selection completed, and the contracts have been signed. So next week I will be having a kickoff meeting with our 2 consulting firms. We broke this into 2 different projects, one for the stream and upper bank stabilization, which is going to be headed up by Cardinal, and they have a long history in the Creek Corridor of doing stabilizing projects. And then the trail and bridges will be headed up by MSA. And we felt this was really necessary to try to get a really much more focused firm that's capable of dealing with that particular phase, because oftentimes, smaller engineering groups or design groups might not have that experience of doing both. So we split it into 2. And it's going to be a little bit more work on our part to coordinate between that, but we feel it's going to end up with a better end product. So as you can see, the engineering work, design work is going to be done basically by the end of this year. Preliminary designs will be in around October, with then the bidding for the construction to happen for the bank and stream in January, and then for the trail and bridges in March of 21. So basically what that means is in 2021, hopefully if all things line up and money is all there, then we'll be able to start constructing of the Creek Corridor in 2021 and have that finished up in 2021. Just a highlight of one of the other projects that you may have seen in Middleton. This is right off of Park Street. This is one of the most glaring examples of the storm, the flood event itself. This was the bank here during reconstruction of that. This was right around last September. Then we had a major storm event. And as you can see, a lot of that work then was wiped out. Just to go back, take a close look at these railroad ties down here. That's that same area right there. So you can see the power and the force of that flood. They took all of that back out, which obviously that was pretty demoralizing to see that. But I just took this picture yesterday. Here's the end result after the construction project here. Everything is stabilized, filling in quite nicely. And you know, this was one of the more heavily engineered areas. So in other areas of the Conservancy, we're hoping to follow a little bit more of a natural type of look so that it doesn't look like everything has just been completely wiped out and reestablished. This moves me into the Conservancy itself. We are undergoing a master plan revision. The original one was done about 20 years ago now, so it's definitely time for an update. One of the major selling points in my mind has been we've done new vegetation surveys. We've implemented random meander surveys, in large part method developed by Tom Bernthal, who is retired DNR and is a member of the Pheasant Branch, sorry. And as you can see in here, based off of that, we were able to subdivide the Conservancy into all these different units based on the vegetation that's within those areas. So you essentially walk through there and you start tailing all the different species that you see, and then you can kind of incorporate the boundaries based off of where there's significant changes. What comes out of that then, the text that goes along with that, each of these areas then has what that vegetation is, and then you can kind of come up with management protocol or objectives for each of these areas so that you can kind of either promote them or diminish them based on what you want and what needs to be done management-wise for that. And then one of the other really cool things, I just got this map yesterday, is kind of how we can then start to relay that information then to the public. And one of the things that I think a lot of people don't know is, and it's kind of hard to tell here because it's in brown, but so this is the creek that comes into the Pheasant Branch Conservancy. The current setup in the Conservancy itself was really only done in the 1960s. Historically, the creek, once it came in, shot across the backside of the properties on Century Avenue and then shot into Lake Mendota. And during the flood event, it actually reverted back to this. We had a bridge down through here that became a dam because of trees and whatnot, and it shot everything back through there. But because of this new setup, what's really happened is while it's saving sediment and deposition from going into Lake Mendota, it's really putting all of that sediment into the Conservancy. And this area in particular is really getting heavily hit in terms of the sediment that's going in there. So while it's serving as a buffer for the rest of the Conservancy up and through here, which is in much higher quality, this area in here is kind of suffering because of it. So the work that we're doing in the creek corridor itself will hopefully help then to diminish the amount of sediment that's coming in through here. But with the larger rain events that we're having, obviously this is becoming much more impacted in through here. One of the other things that was mentioned before is, so up here is the county portion and the water that's coming down through here. So again, the purchase of the acre property will not only help benefit the county portion of the Conservancy, but also will help eliminate sediment and phosphorus and other bad nutrients from getting into the Conservancy as well. One of the other things, lastly, that's been really interesting from our aspect is with the flooding of 2018, it's really raised the groundwater level to a large degree. And we've found more examples of new springs, which we're calling seeps, that have popped up in various areas. So the master planning process, we hope to have wrapped up. We'll have another poll going out for the Conservancy itself, and then we'll have all that wrapped up into a document. And that is, I'll leave it at that. So thank you very much for the time. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Luke, I'm assuming I'm popping up here somewhere. We have a lot of great questions, which is exciting. I think one of the first questions we have, which a couple of people have asked, are there any future plans, and maybe this would go to the county executive or someone from the county, future plans for the area east of the newly purchased area, or are there any other lands that the county maybe has targeted for purchase to protect the watershed?
Yeah, is Laura on the call? Laura would, if she could jump on, yeah, that'd be great. There was another question too that maybe Laura could address, if that's okay while she's on, about our relationship with the Ho-Chunk Nation.
Yeah, sure. If you want to go ahead, if you saw a question, County Executive Parisi, feel free to answer it. You had to do with the relationship with Ho-Chunk?
Yeah, we work with the Ho-Chunk on a number of projects and have a great working relationship with them. I would let Laura comment on the relationship specific to this project, and then Laura, if you could touch base on the visitor center question, please.
Sure, absolutely. Good
Thanks.
morning, everyone. Laura Hicklin with Dane County Land and Water Resources Department. Really, when we think about the watershed and future expansion, we are looking a little bit more actually to the north and northwest. Historically, those efforts to protect lands either outside of the Conservancy to protect the Conservancy itself or to expand the Conservancy have really focused on the ground charge infiltration area for the Frederick Springs. And the Friends, the city, the county, USGS all worked together a number of years ago to map that recharge area, and you would find that more headed west. So although, you know, I certainly love to see preservation in all areas, if you look directly east of the Conservancy and the new addition, that's not one of the more sensitive areas that I'd be concerned about if we see a land use change there. When we look to development of the new parcel, as the executive mentioned, we're really focused on wetland restoration and better stormwater management. I know that's a concern in the Middleton area, and we did consider whether or not it would be appropriate to have some type of shelter or nature center on the new property. That's certainly something that the community is interested in. But when we conducted that review, it was clear that this site just can't support that type of development. And to really honor the integrity of the restoration, we were actually locating the wetland restoration and stormwater management practices right where the buildings were located. I'm not, you know, I'm sure it made sense 100 years ago when those buildings were put up, but today when we look at the land, that's a low area, that's an area that had historic wetland characteristics. And so that's really the heart of the wetland restoration. We will provide access and parking just off of Pheasant Branch Road, and we're very interested in the ongoing discussion with the Friends and the city and others to see if somewhere within the Conservancy we might at some point be able to identify a location for some type of shelter or restrooms.
Great, good stuff. And real quick, Laura, before you duck off, do you want to touch on the county working with the Ho-Chunk Nation on some of the cultural importance?
Yeah, absolutely. As Joe mentioned, this is a really significant site, and the hill that overlooks the whole Conservancy, you get a great view from, you know, down to the south towards Lake Mendota, or to the north over the new acquisition. That site in particular, that hill has remnants, it has historic significance, and we would like to work with the Ho-Chunk Nation to honor that heritage and work with them on visioning what they want to see for the property and how it can be used and honored consistent with the Ho-Chunk vision. So we will engage with them, and that's a really important element as we think about future use and restoration, not only of the acre farm, but the Pheasant Branch Conservancy as a whole.
Great. Real quick, just a housekeeping thing I wanted to address. We had some questions on how to donate to Seed the Need. And if people go to pheasantbranch.org and push the Seed the Need button, there is a chance to donate. And of course, that will help fund some of the work that's being done in this new tract of land. I kind of want to move it around here. We had a question for Mark. Somebody wanted to know if you could talk more about some of the specific ways resiliency is built into the restoration plan, like how will the water be managed upstream to avoid new construction from being damaged, some of the items like that.
Sure. Unfortunately, within the city itself, we're quite limited in terms of property available for this. We do currently have the Stormwater Utility Board in Middleton is having a study done right now to see what can be done to expand existing areas, the Confluence Pond over by Spectrum Brands and our Kettle Ponds, Esser Pond in particular, and to some degree Graver Pond, but really some of these areas are at capacity already, so we're not able to do a heck of a lot. So what we're looking at is trying to work more with the town of Middleton, town of Springfield, city of Madison, the outlying areas where there is some available property to see if they can incorporate more stormwater features outside of the area before it gets into the creek corridor, because it's almost kind of like a funnel. All of these areas kind of drain into the creek corridor, and since the area is so developed all around through there, we can't do a heck of a lot to increase that availability. All we can really try to do is to make sure that once it gets into the creek corridor, it's not rushing through there a million miles an hour and taking everything out.
It's sort of a question along the same lines. As we are revitalizing this area, somebody was wondering, when will the new pedestrian bike trail be built? And then a similar question to that I found interesting was, as the Conservancy expands, have there been thoughts of how e-bikes and e-scooters will sort of share the area with your traditional walkers and people-powered bikes, I guess, for lack of a better term?
I can't answer the bike trail portion since that's county, so I'll leave that for them. As far as e-bikes, that is actually something that we've been talking about recently. We had previously an existing e-bike ordinance in the city. We're looking at potentially revising that just because of the explosion in e-bike usage. I think some of it is being changed personally in terms of it's allowing people who previously wouldn't ride bikes at all to use them. So I don't think it's a situation of the old e-bikes where they're zooming down through there at 25 miles an hour. It's people that really do need the assistance, but I can't really say one way or the other how it's going to end up. But I do know it's been talked about by our various committees, and it'll actually be coming up here probably in a license and ordinance committee meeting here in the near future. So if you are interested in that, be mindful of what comes up on upcoming agendas through the notify me option in the city of Middleton.
Laura, do you have anything as far as the trail system goes and building the new pedestrian bike trails in the acquired?
Yeah, sure. Anyone who's been involved with the history of Pheasant Branch knows that the trail discussion can be one of the most controversial. So you could schedule a whole nother 101 just on trails in the Conservancy alone, and you'd probably need all day for it, but I'll do my best. So the county's role in trails is to partner with local communities and to find ways to connect regionally significant public lands. So certainly we want to make sure that people from throughout the area can get to Pheasant Branch Conservancy and can use a bike trail network that provides both a transportation option and a recreation option. So this is part of what we call the North Mendota Trail. And right now we've been really active in segments of the trail, not directly to Pheasant Branch Conservancy yet, but certainly that is in the future planning. We have great partners, again, with the city, town of Westport, Wanakee, and we recently completed an awesome segment. If you haven't been on it, get on it, along County Highway M in Westport. So that's part of the network. The county was able to partner with Westport and get in a nice section of boardwalk along County Highway M. We're continuing kind of to wind our way to the south and west from there through Governor Nelson, through the Inspired Daycare property, through the community at Bishop's Bay, and then down to Mendota County Park. Once we tackle those segments and finalize those, there is a concept plan that we would run a regional bike trail across the acre farm and then kind of back over to the north and east to circle back to Governor Nelson. At this point, that's really just a concept plan, but we are making sure that we keep it on all of the maps and documentation so that people remember that it's out there as an opportunity and something that we'll need to work on in the future as the details become more clear.
I think that kind of hits on the other question that somebody had asked about an opportunity to open up more of the interior part of the Conservancy. And I guess the short answer is making trails is a difficult process or a long thought out process. Is that kind of what I'm hearing?
Yes, that's true. And so there's two types of trails in my mind for the Conservancy. And again, probably a range of opinions on this. There's the internal trail network, and then there's kind of the regional trail network. And so my previous comments were focused a lot on the regional trail network and kind of either limestone or possibly even paved, what we would call bicycle pedestrian trail. There's also a really awesome network within the Conservancy. Some of it's crushed limestone. There's some paved sections. A lot of it's mowed grass. And that's been a really interesting discussion over the last 2 years in particular, as we try to find the balance between habitat protection and making sure that birds in particular at the Conservancy have the uninterrupted habitat that they need for nesting, and then balancing that with recreational use. And that's been a contentious topic at times over the last several years. And again, we're working with the city and the Friends to find that balance between habitat protection and then making sure that people can use the Conservancy and enjoy it in the way they want to.
And just one more bike question, I swear. I just want to lump all these together so we can get them out of the way, or not out of the way, so we can address them all while we're talking about them. Somebody else was wondering about having bike lanes available on Pheasant Branch Road leading up to the new property. Is that anything the county has, is that something the county would be in charge of or looked into, or?
That's not within our jurisdiction, but we'd be very interested in that discussion. That's definitely part of the bike network, analysis, is where do we have off-road trails, where do we have on-road bike lanes, and how do we kind of mesh all that together. And although from a recreational perspective, off-road is always ideal, on-road sometimes works well too. I will say that Pheasant Branch Road is pretty constrained based on the topography. There's not a lot of room to work with, but that doesn't mean it's entirely out of the question. But there too, that road is not under our jurisdiction, so it would be a conversation with the town and the city as to whether or not there's room for bike lanes.
Yeah. I haven't heard of any conversation at the city level. It would probably come up more concertedly when repavement or reconstruction of that road wouldn't come up. And I'm not really sure where that even sits on our timeline for road reconstructions. So sorry.
No, good. Thanks for the drop in. Question maybe for Laura or maybe Lloyd from the Friends group wants to answer this too, but how many species of plants are going to be in the newly acquired area, and kind of what thought goes into those species of plants?
Well, I'll take a crack at this. We don't have a magic estimate, but what we're shooting for is platinum prairie seed mix that contains at least 75 species with a seeding rate of 100 live seeds per square foot. So that's going to be expensive to do, but if you get a good seed in at the start, you'll have a better establishment of the prairie. So hopefully, we can't say that if we put, the seeds down with 75 different kinds, that all 75 will come up, but we can be hopeful. So the answer, I think, is we're trying to get as many species as we can and a good diversity so that will support blooming through the entire growing season so that we can support, the maximum types of pollinators and provide the most habitat for, birds and wildlife, butterflies, bees, other things. So, and there will be more plants and more species available if more people donate to seed the need. So go to our website and push on the button.
Good plug, Lloyd. Laura, anything to add to that from the
Yeah,
county?
really quick. I just want to give a shout out to Lars Higdon and Shane Otto. They were listening in, not sure if they're still with us, but they are the staff people that really are the masterminds behind the restoration work. They work closely with the Friends and others, and they've done an amazing job accelerating our restoration work, not only here, but throughout the county. And one of the really cool ideas that they have for this restoration and why we're so excited to have everyone's support for the Seed the Need campaign is that we'd like to use the seed bank that will be established through the restoration to provide seed for rare and unique prairie plants for restoration projects throughout the county. So we partner with all sorts of organizations to provide seed to support their restoration projects. And this will be a seed bank, or kind of like a seed farm, if you will, that will help not only keep this prairie going, but as these plants get established, we can collect the seeds from the native prairie plants and use them to help restore land throughout Dane County.
When we talked about, and this could be for Lloyd or Laura, early on we talked about, when you run the trails through, you risk breaking up a sensitive area or habitat. Are there any species in the Conservancy that are threatened or declining that we really do want to protect? Are there very specific species of either plants or animals or anything that use it as a true sanctuary?
Yeah, that's absolutely true, but I am not. I've seen Lloyd nodding, so I'll turn it over to her because I'm not your plant person. But it's pretty well established that birds, pollinators, insects really need large tracts of uninterrupted landscape in order to be successful and to continue.
And I'm not the plant expert either. So there are things in the current Conservancy, the planted portion, that have been established, but we're hoping to even have a greater diversity in the acre addition. And I think it took the county and the Friends like 11 years to seed the their existing portion of the prairie. And the really exciting thing about the acre addition is that the county has plans to get it seeded in 4 years. So that's really fast. And the property is currently seeded now. And so one 40-acre parcel is in soybeans, and that would be the first that would be restored or planted.
Great. Well, the clock on my computer says we're at 9 o'clock, so I want to be respectful of everybody's time. I want to thank all of our panelists, Lloyd, County Executive, Mark Wegner from City of Middleton, Laura, obviously, thank you so much for stepping in and answering so many questions. I want to thank our sponsors again. This was a really good talk. We really enjoyed everyone joining. We had a lot of great questions we couldn't get to, but you know, hopefully we'll be able to address those as the day goes on, or as you have something you really want to send us a Facebook message, and maybe we'll try to answer a question if we didn't get to it. We will be back doing these talks again, or another virtual Yahara Lakes 101 on September 9th, 9/9/2020. And we'll talk about lakeshore health, which is a ubiquitous topic. It's everywhere in the watershed. So should be another really exciting talk. Really quick too, I want to give a plug to Clean Lakes Alliance, something we've been working on since April, our Resilient Landscapes project, which we're partnering with around, I believe, 14 organizations. And it's 10 things you can do at home to help the watershed. So go to cleanlakesalliance.org/top10. Super easy things, from creating a rain garden to a rain barrel to raking your leaves to picking up your pet waste. All these things you can do at home. We're all sitting at home. A lot of us are during the sequester here. And to kind of just touch on something, somebody wondered what it would be if we put in rain barrels. We did a little back of the envelope math, and if everyone in Dane County installed one rain barrel, the rain it would collect throughout the summer could hold back enough to fill 10 football fields 25 feet deep with water. So that's a pretty good amount of water that we can maybe infiltrate instead of running into the lake. So again, thank you so much to everybody who joined us this morning, and we look back forward to seeing you here on Wednesday, September 9th. Have a great day.
Bye.